The following is a demonstration of the Alert Stratus contract management and billing module for Microsoft Dynamics CRM 2011. If we go to the Alert Stratus menu, we can see our service contracts menu associated directly here. We see a list of the contracts that we have in place. We can then select an agreement, open that up, and notice that we have a contract name. We can identify a service level for that agreement. We can also associate the account and account location and contact for this contract. We put in the start and end dates for this agreement and a default service code. This is the service code that will be used when we take service calls against the line items of this agreement. So if we had a case and we have a T&M service code here, it will then apply that to the case so that we'll know to bill for our labor and travel at the appropriate rates identified in the service code itself. We then have our default coverage code, which tells us when to bill regular time or overtime labor, or what coverage is appropriate when calls are taken in certain times. We then have our billing account and billing address, which can be different from the contract account and location. We can then also have a different billing contact from the contract level contact. We then identify the billing frequency, which can be anything from monthly, quarterly, all the way up to a 5-year agreement, and associate a price level. So we can adjust our contract pricing based on the standard price levels available in CRM. Identify the next invoice date and our billing start date and end date. This gives us the ability to bill either in advance, in arrears, or on even terms throughout the agreement. Do we wish this contract to auto-renew at the end of its term? If so, is there an increased cost of living adjustment to the contract, which we can identify with the renewal percentage, which will upcharge by that percentage on renewal? We do support multi-currency, so we select the currency for the agreement, identify the total net price of the agreement, which will then be calculated based on our billing frequency, and billed appropriately under the terms and conditions that we've agreed to with the client. We can also identify contract costs. Again, if we're using things like third parties and vendor contracts, we can put in our costs to additionally add to our contract profitability information. Once the contract has been entered into the system, we can now add line items to that agreement. And the line items come from an additional entity in the contract module that allow us to add assets or specific serialized pieces of equipment, hardware, software, or equipment of any kind to our account records. In this case, I have one single item associated with this contract, and if we pull up its detail, we identify the line item as one of 3 types. A global line item allows us to do a global billing for support of all items at a specific location for a certain dollar figure. Product-based billing allows us to identify for all of certain products we charge X dollars, and all of certain other products we would charge Y dollars. And equipment-based, as we see here, is actually putting a serialized piece of equipment from the asset table associated with this contractual agreement. We can identify its serial number, which is pulled from the asset table. The start date and end date coincides with the agreement. And then we have the entitlement section. This will flow through from the main agreement, but may be different for certain line items. So we could have different levels of coverage or different SLAs associated with specific pieces of equipment or hardware or software associated with the contract. We identify the price interval and identify the price for that amount, and we can also associate discounts with this contract as well. If this is a vendor-supported contract, or we're reselling a vendor's contract to a client, we can put in all the vendor components and our cost elements to this contract here so that we can eventually generate payables, our payable vouchers, for the vendor portion of the agreement. And of course, each line item can have unlimited amounts of notes associated with it. As contracts go through their life cycle, very commonly there are adjustments or changes, being additions or deletions of items from contracts. We support this via the contract adjustment component. We can generate contract adjustments within the module, identifying the line item to be adjusted, added, or removed, and put in the amount and the cost amount to adjust. The system will automatically prorate those amounts so that we're getting an accurate revenue and cost adjustment as required based on the change to the agreement. Much like cases and projects within the Stratus system, contracts can be invoiced through our standard billing batches. Once those contracts are invoiced under the terms and conditions that we've identified on the agreement, those invoices will create orders in CRM which pass through the standard connector to either NAV, GP, or AX into the sales order processing module. Moving on from the contract module itself, we will now take a look at the account equipment. All of these items can sit independently, or they could be added as line items to an agreement. If we open up a specific account equipment record, we can see that we identify a product from the products table. We identify the quantity of those that this customer has, identify its serial number if necessary. We can also put in a tag ID other than the serial number that is a unique identifier for this item. Product versions are available. A sold date and install date, as well as description of the item, is associated. We can also associate an item with parent equipment. So the system supports a hierarchy of parent and child equipment. So if we have a large piece of equipment and we have separate line items for its components, this is where the parent equipment would be the larger item and all of its components may be individual serialized items in the account equipment record. Again, we put a default service code on there so that when we take cases against this equipment, whether it's related with a contract or not, it will apply this default service code so it knows what to bill in terms of labor, travel, and for materials and expenses when the case is completed. Coverage code. This supports the idea of when which labor rates should be used based on the coverage code associated. So certain hours will be regular time, certain hours will be overtime or holiday rates. We can also identify default resource. If a default technician is associated with this unit, we can have that flow through to the cases as well. We then apply the warranty information, so our warranty start and end date and what service code should be used within that period and coverage code within that period. We identify the equipment location and an equipment contact. This concludes the contract and company equipment demonstration for Dynamics CRM 2011.